Welcome back, degenerates. This is Locked In. I'm your host, Mason Cameron, at PFF_Mace on Twitter. And with me, as always, my partner in crime, Vishaal Gupta, at Vishaal_Gupta95 on Twitter. How are you doing this week? We had a nice little game last night. Well, not really nice. It was kind of like interesting towards the end there, but not a lot of scoring for the first three quarters. We were talking about it before the show. I slept through the game, forgot they were even playing it. So I had to go back today, watch the all 22. Found some funny things. We got some points that we're going to talk about today. But how you doing, V? How you living?
Doing good. Excited to talk about this slate. We have some awesome games to go over for for Sunday. Should be a ton of fun. So yeah, excited to get into it.
Yeah, it should be a good one. So the first one we do have on the slate, like I said, wasn't necessarily the greatest of games through the first quarter. But if you're a Philly fan, you definitely liked seeing towards the end there. So Washington headed into Philly for a little NFC East divisional matchup there. As anybody that's paid attention to anything has known all season, Washington has been an elite offense. They've been fantastic. They're putting up points and numbers. But that's slowed down a little bit in recent weeks, kind of stemming right from that Chicago game about 3 or 4 games ago. And Philly's actually surging. They're looking like one of the best defenses in the NFL right now. And they went ahead and captured this win 26-18. They were 4.5-point favorites, which they covered. And the game total on this one, 49.5. It ended up under. I think some people were probably sweating it there towards the end. As you know, Washington started to come back and drive for it. The 2 late touchdowns by Philly, which we'll get into here in a second, but still overall pretty solid under there. Like I said, slow game. As they headed into the fourth quarter, it was 10-6 Washington. So I don't think a lot of people expected that. 28 total points in the fourth quarter, 20 from Philly alone. The 2 late scores from Saquon. Dude had almost 200 yards. And then Washington didn't score until it was just too late. Zach Ertz had that insane 2-point conversion. I was sitting there watching that play 3 or 4 times in the all 22 going, did he get his foot down? Does he get his foot down? I had to go back into the broadcast and actually look to like see if it was officially down, like what they were looking at, get a better look at it. But what an interesting game. And, you know, we were talking about it a little bit before the game there. The 2 Saquon Barkley touchdowns right at the end didn't even get touched. The Washington defense just kind of fell apart there at the end. So you hate to see that ended up affecting the game, and they lost this one pretty much because of it. But V, what did you make of this matchup?
Yeah, starting with Philly, I think the first thing you have to talk about is their defense just looks really good right now. And I think it's on all 3 levels, starting with their defensive line. I think the big sequence in this game was that 4th down stop that they had in the third or fourth quarter, where Washington had its 2nd and 1, and they ended up turning it over on downs. And it was really that defensive line just shut them down on 3 straight plays. They really held that rushing attack that Washington has been so proficient with this season in check. The linebackers, especially Zach Braun, all over the field, just shutting down all these little swing passes to Eckler, and then slowing down Jaden Daniels from trying to do anything with his feet. And then the secondary just getting better and better every week, whether it's Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Blankenship, whoever, all those guys just playing super well on the back end. Terry McLaurin was completely shut down, only had a couple of catches in that game. So really impressed with the Phillies defense. I think they can carry this team, not only just do a playoff berth, but I think they can make some noise in the playoffs if their defense can continue to perform like this and get better, because again, they are super young, whether you're talking about DeJean, Mitchell, Jalen Carter, Nakobe Dean, all these guys, still a very young defense that is getting better and going to continue to improve. So I'm excited to see that. I think there are still concerns on the offense for guys, not named Saquon Barkley or A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. It's mainly like, how confident are we with Jalen Hurts going forward into the postseason? If you're in a situation where you're down a score late in the game, are you going to trust Jalen Hurts to be able to, bring you back and put you over the top? And it just feels like he missed a couple throws yesterday that you just really can't be missing this deep into his career at this point. Just like there's that wide open play to A.J. Brown, I think on the left sideline yesterday that was, being clipped all over the place. Just a really bad miss by him. I think over and over again, we're kind of seeing that this year. I think they're doing a good enough job. Like Kellen Moore is doing a pretty decent job scheming guys open, whether it's Dallas Goedert. I think there's been a number of times this year where he's gotten Goddard wide open on one of those little delay routes over the middle to pick up huge gains. So I think they're trying to do what they can, but they're still a little concerned with what we're seeing out of Jalen Hurts. We'll see what he can do the rest of the season. Washington, I think a lot of people are maybe freaking out that the curse of Cliff Kingsbury's second half downfall is going to continue again this season. Had a tough game yesterday. They did score 27 points last week, but it wasn't like the prettiest 27 points you're ever going to see. They struggled against Chicago a few weeks ago. They didn't get into the end zone until the final play of the game. So maybe we're starting to see that, but I'm also not super concerned with that because they have a pretty easy schedule coming up. They still play Dallas twice. They get to play the Saints defense. They get to play the Falcons defense. I think they have the Titans on the schedule. So even if there is a slight drop off with that offense, given that the opponents that they have, I'm not overly concerned. And I think Washington is still going to be in the thick of things once we get to December and January.
Yeah, their schedule: Dallas at home, Tennessee at home, at New Orleans, at home versus the Eagles, at home versus the Falcons, and on the road in Dallas. So any of
outside of the Eagles game, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, we could throw the Falcons in there too, probably to some degree, just because they're not pushovers quite like the other teams that
offensively, Atlanta's not a pushover, but defensively,
yeah, absolutely, yeah, absolutely, they are. But I think probably a step over that too. And frankly, we talked about Jalen Hurts' kind of issues. He has some issues with turnover worthy plays, and something is going to have to give when they get further into this season and their playoff hopes solidify. Well, I guess I shouldn't say hopes because they're 8-2, they're making the playoffs, but when you look at what they can potentially do in the NFC to move into a deep playoff run, part of that revolves around having confidence in your passer, and we just haven't quite seen Jalen Hurts do as much as we had wanted to see. But luckily for him, the difference in his season last year and this one is that now he has a really solid defense. Again, I mean, they were a solid defense last year, but they were horrendous in coverage. They were literally one of the worst teams in coverage last year. We talked about it every single week. And this year, they're one of the best teams in coverage in the NFL. They are fantastic. Guys like Zach Bond has one of the top graded coverage grades in by a linebacker. You have Cooper DeJean, who is the number one graded coverage corner in the NFL right now, and he plays primarily from the slot, potentially one of the positions that's harder to grade out really, really well in because you are at a disadvantage in the number of routes that guys can run against you. So when we look at that, and then, Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter had a really slow start to the season. He started to pick up. He's one of the most efficient pass rushers in the NFL, only in his second year. So he's fantastic. He's a phenom. We love watching these guys play, and they've quietly built up a really, really solid, dangerous core of young defenders. And you mentioned Nakobe Dean. He had the big pick the other night or a couple weeks ago. So, these are things that are very encouraging for them moving forward. And while they might not be the most flashy and potent offense, they can put some points on the board when they really do need it. So with a guy like Saquon Barkley, I mean, I'm going to probably
keep beating that guy. Like, it was weird in the first half that it didn't seem like he was doing anything. And then as soon as they gave it to him in the second half, they were able to break the game wide open. It's not complicated.
Yeah.
Not complicated. It's
not complicated. Go give your best player the football and let him do things. You paid him a bunch of money. You went and, took him from a bunch of teams who were interested in, like, go and give him the football as much as humanly possible. And he's been fantastic. Had the backwards hurdle, a couple weeks ago. So can't wait to see what he does next. Eagles poised to make a big run. Washington, the alarm's not on yet, but they do need to kind of figure some things out. So
they're still a double-digit win team. No concerns.
Absolutely. So the first game we head into for our slate of the week is one that you are eyeballing here, and actually a lot of other sharps are also eyeballing. This is Cleveland heading into New Orleans to take on the Saints. We'll talk about the spread here in a second because it's a little bit iffy. Game total on this one, about 44 points. So for anybody been paying attention for the last 24 hours, this line has swung from -1 New Orleans, to -1 Cleveland, back to -1 New Orleans. And I do not know where this game will stop. So go ahead, make sure you're shopping around for this one. Try to get your points. If you might even try to go ahead and see what you can't get on the money line here, because this is a really interesting matchup. Like I said, sharps are heavy on Cleveland here. We've got 65% of the money, but only 36% of the bets. So they are putting in there. And it makes sense. I mean, I think people are overplaying a little bit about New Orleans covering their first game last week since week 4. Something Marquez Valdez-Scantling's not going to have 3 for 95 again or whatever. So
it was more than that. It was like 130. I don't know what.
Or whatever. Yeah, whatever he ended up ending with, those huge catches. Oh yeah, I think he had a 60 and a 40, so definitely over 100. Yeah. But anyway, so this is one of those interesting matchups. V, you are riding with Cleveland here, and you're shopping around. You're taking the points. What are you seeing in this matchup that makes you lean towards Cleveland?
Yep, definitely on Cleveland in this one. Got them at +1. I would like them even up to -1, -1.5. It's essentially a pick 'em at all these lines. So definitely like Cleveland at all those points. But yeah, I'm going to continue what we harped on last week. Obviously, karmic justice. We go on a huge rant against the Saints, and then of course, not only do they cover, they win outright in a ridiculous game again. Just the whole thing, top to bottom, was a ridiculous game. And I'm going to continue what I said last week, though. I still have zero faith in this Saints team. Their success last week came down to 2 huge passes to MVS that gave them an early lead, and Atlanta just wasn't able to come back. They were just not able to score points. I think Koo missed 3 field goals in that game that really hurt them. But Atlanta was moving the ball quite well, especially on the ground. Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier combined for 31 carries for 175 yards on the ground. Cleveland has the capability of doing the same thing with Nick Chubb back, having a nice bye week to continue rehabbing that knee. He should be back to 100% in this game, and I think he's going to have a monster game. So I have no concerns with Cleveland's offense being able to put up some points in this one against a poor Saints defense. The big thing for me in this game is what Cleveland's defense can do to the Saints offense. Cleveland's defense is significantly better than the Falcons' defense, especially when it comes to pressuring the quarterback. Cleveland is pressuring the quarterback at a rate of 27.3%. Atlanta was doing it at just 17.4%. Cleveland has 27 sacks on the season in 9 games. Atlanta, playing one more game at 10, only has 9 sacks on the season. That's a league worst. Even despite Atlanta's complete lack of pressure rate, the Saints only scored 20 points in that game last week, and Carr was kept completely clean. It just goes to show that game was a complete fluke last week, where the Saints winning it. I have no faith in them to win or even cover in this game. Definitely like Cleveland. If Jameis can do a better job of taking care of the ball than he did there last time out against the Chargers, this game honestly shouldn't even be.
Oh, we might have lost V. I think V's connection might have dropped out there, but that's okay. We'll give him a second. He'll probably jump in here. But no, I definitely do agree with the sentiment that V is going for here. The big thing is that this Cleveland defense is incredible. It's so much better than what we've seen out of Atlanta's unit this year. Myles Garrett was one that I was just about to talk to. Had a huge day the last time they went out there in week 9 against the Chargers. He had a 3-sack day from what I could see. So it was pretty impressive day from him. 5 pressures and a 24% rid rate. So when you have a guy like that, it's going to be a pretty easy way to develop pressure. And what we also have seen from this is that, let me get my little list here. Yes, Talisi Fuaga, who's going to be playing the left tackle spot, who actually had a really good start to the season. Pass blocking has been a lot worse over the last few weeks. 54 pass blocking grade. That's 62nd out of left tackles here. V, welcome back.
Sorry about that.
No worries. And Glitchy, what's up? How are you doing? How are you living? Welcome in. Yeah, we're just chilling. We're just picking up some games. How are you doing? We were talking about Cleveland, and then we had a technical difficulty, but that's all right. So I was just echoing your sentiment, V, and I'll let you pick it back up there. But I was talking about how Myles Garrett, he had a really good day the last time they went out there, week 9. He had a 3-sack day. So that's another one of those things that can be a game wrecker for a team like New Orleans, who hasn't been a great pass blocking team. They're getting some pieces back. They're getting Eric McCoy back this week, which is a huge boost to them. But I'm pretty sure we talked about it a bit last week. I think Lucas Patrick went down. I haven't gotten a chance to check their injury report again, but that's another huge loss for them, as he's been fantastic at guard. And, Talisi Fuaga, who is their left tackle, their rookie left tackle out of Oregon State, he was known for his run blocking, and that's kind of what we've seen out of him this year. He's been a good run blocker. He hasn't been a good pass blocker. He started off the season as a really good pass blocker, but has kind of fallen off a cliff. And that's part of the issues that the Saints have had offensively. They don't really protect well. So I agree, but I'll let you take it back off where you were talking about the pass rush and the difference in how they're producing.
Yeah, I just think that's the key in this game. Against Atlanta last week, Atlanta's the worst pass rush team in the league right now, and you saw that being a big effect in that game. Derek Carr was kept clean. Despite being kept clean, the Saints still only scored 20 points in that game. It's going to be a much different story this time around. Cleveland, huge pressure rate. You still have guys like Myles Garrett out there, even with Zadarius Smith getting traded. Still have a lot of faith in that defensive line being able to get home against Derek Carr. And if you're going to be able to pressure Derek Carr, then I really don't think this Saints offense is going to be able to produce anything. I think this should be a relatively easy win for Cleveland, as long as Jameis doesn't do some of the bad Jameis things we've seen him do, like he did against the Chargers in their last game. If he can do a better job taking care of the ball, I think this is a double-digit win easily for the Browns in this one. I think their defense is going to suffocate Carr in that offense.
We have to also take everything. This is why trends are really important, you guys. We talk about this a lot with trends, and it's easy for us to fall into like, okay, just their last game. They're coming off of a bye, so they're also rested, I believe, right? They had bye last week. Yeah, so they're coming off of a bye. They're rested. Something that we have to take into consideration is we talk about it a lot. Last 3 games. I think last 3 games is one of the most important metrics we can look at a team. So when we look at things and we take like a season metric and then we take like the last 3 games, that can show you how they're trending. Are they going up? Are they going down? And it can give some context to the overall metrics that we see in terms of just overall things like scoring, points per game, yards per game, things like that. Just general box score stats that you guys can go and look up through like Pro Football Reference or wherever we're going. You don't need to have fancy tools to go and find some of these things. We can go through trends. One of the things that I really love, teamrankings.com, they give against the spread trends, they give team stat trends. And one of the things that we do have to go back and look at, because it feels like it was so long ago, it was 3 weeks ago, but this is the same team that handed Baltimore a 29-24 loss in Cleveland. Like this team's not a pushover. They can go, they're going to play defense. That's one of the best offenses in the NFL in Baltimore. They held them to 24 points. So when we talk about what we've seen from the Saints, I'm not really sure we're going to get a similar sentiment out of that. So I completely agree with you. Like in Cleveland, hopefully if you guys go shop around, you can get it with some points. That would be nice. Or, we talk about this a lot. When lines get this close, it's a pick 'em. So you might as well go find some money line value and see where you can't get some dollars out of that. So completely agree with that sentiment. The next game we have on the list here, though, is one that we're both in on, and it's so interesting. I think we're going to probably have a very similar sentiment. Indianapolis heading into New York to take on the Jets. The Jets are -4 in this one, -3.5, -4, depending on where you're shopping. Game total about 43.5 points, 44 points. If you're going to lean on the under like I am here, I'm just going to go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off, V. We're both in on Indy. We're both in on Indy, +4 here. The biggest things are, at least for me, Indy 7-3 against the spread. They're one of the top against the spread records in the NFL. 0-2 with Flacco the last 2, granted, but they're turning back to Anthony Richardson this week, which is I don't even want to continue to go on about Anthony Richardson. I was looking up some fourth quarter and some like third down numbers, and I was like, oh man, there Joe Burrow. Oh, there's Justin Herbert. Okay. Oh, Mahomes is there. Yeah, that's why they're so good. They're great on third down. Wait, what is Anthony Richardson doing up here with like the most big time throws on third down in the NFL this year or something like that? I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but it was just interesting to see him pop up on some metrics that you wouldn't necessarily expect. Maybe we can get something out of him. Who knows? But frankly, I don't think it matters against a team like the Jets right now.
Yeah.
I don't see a lot going well with the Jets. And when we do look at what the Colts have done while Anthony Richardson has been on the field, 4-1 against the spread. They are 2-0 against the spread as dogs this year. And 4 of 5 of their last games, or excuse me, 4 of his 5 starts and finishes were unders. So that's something that we like to see for sure here, which is going to lean on our under 44. But we're just going to be following the Jets around for a little bit. I've kind of picked them up as the team to follow around and pick on for the last couple of weeks. And it's really until they show up to the game and they stop having to lay points to teams that they have no business laying points to. What do we continue to talk about with the Jets? That they struggle to be efficient offensively, and it's because they're terrible in the first half. They are not very efficient in the first half. 27.8% scoring drive percentage in the first half. That is 28th in the NFL. 32.9 successful play rate. So a successful play is measured by, I believe it's like 4 yards on first down and 3 yards on second down, and then a first down on third down. So like those are what like successful plays, and anything above that, obviously. So those are what successful plays are measured. They're 21st in the NFL with that, 32.9%. And I know the Jets D is playing not good right now. I believe that they're 31st in EPA per play allowed over their last 3. But I don't think Indy should really scare them so much that we can go over a 44. But I think that they have the tools and the pieces that they could potentially win this game outright, like 21 to 13, because the Jets just do not have the horses right now to keep up with people offensively. That's just kind of what I was seeing about that. It's an interesting one. I'm really interested to hear your take on it, as I'm leaning on both the spread and the under. I'm going to take a little double action here. You are just leaning towards the spread. What are you seeing in this one, which has you leaning towards Indy?
Yeah, echoing a lot of the same sentiments, and the big thing is you just really have to start with the Jets and their offense. We said it last week. We'll continue saying it. You just can't trust them right now. They've scored 22 or fewer points in 7 straight games. They have 6 games with less than 12. 4 of their last 6, they have less than 20 points of their last 6 games. So they're just not doing anything well. Rodgers has thrown for over 250 yards just 3 times this season. He only has 3 games this year with a passer rating of over 100. I mentioned last week that he's on pace to be sacked the most times he has been since 2018, and then he went ahead and got sacked 3 more times last week. It's not going to get easier this week. Tyron Smith has already been ruled out. They're going to be bringing in their rookie Olu Fashanu to play left tackle. We'll see how he's able to do. I think he's a good player, but again, he's still a rookie, and this is not an easy matchup. They still have DeForest Buckner on that Colts defensive line, who has played well since returning from injury. So that's not going to be – I just don't have much faith in this Jets offense, even though their Colts defense is not very good. We've seen them struggle a lot, especially last week. Bills had a pretty easy time moving the ball. And then the big thing for the Colts offense is obviously Anthony Richardson coming back. Not sure how that's going to go with the passing game, but what it is going to do is going to be a major boost for the rushing game. Jonathan Taylor not looked good the last couple of weeks with Joe Flacco under center. He only had 48 rushing yards a couple of weeks ago against the Vikings. Last week, he did have 114 rushing yards against the Bills, but 58 of them came on one play. If you take out that long of 58, he only had 20 carries for 56 yards. That's 2 yards per carry. So it's just not been very efficient on the ground with Joe Flacco under center. He's played much better when Anthony Richardson is there, which obviously makes sense. There's just extra bodies that you have to account for if you're a defense. Now you're going up against a Jets defense that is allowing the 8th most rushing yards per game. They have allowed 145 or more rushing yards in 4 of their last 5 games. So I just think this is going to be a Jonathan Taylor monster game for him. I think he's going to run all over this Jets defense. We'll see what they do in the passing game. Michael Pittman will be back, so they do have their full array of weapons in the passing game for Indy. I don't know how much it's going to make a difference, but I do think the rushing game is going to look really, really good. So easy cover for me in this one. 4 points is too many.
4 points is way too many, and it's something we were talking about. They should probably this game should probably be like under the 3 line. I think if
Yeah,
I were
for
setting
sure.
this line, it'd be 2. It would be
Yeah.
2 for Indy, and I mean, I still don't even like the Jets laying points, even when it's 2. When we talk
Yeah.
about the running game, the Jets have this is something we talked about last week too, and it came to fruition. The Jets have 73 missed tackles on runs this year. That is the next highest team is the Commanders, 59.
That's a
More
big
than
drop.
14 more missed tackles than any other team in the NFL. So that is a huge setback. It's a huge detriment to what they're doing. They got absolutely swamped by the Cardinals in a game that I said that you go and take them on the money line because they have no business laying points on the road to anybody. And I get that they're home now and they're playing I would say maybe a similar caliber opponent as Arizona, where Arizona's shown some potential. They do play well in games. They're not a terribly solid defense, but they looked like it when they went and played the Jets. So that's something that you always have to take into account is how they're playing against the caliber of opponent they are. And the Jets don't even play well against poor opponents. So it's funny because it's something we talked about last week where the Jets cut off the schneid by beating a Texans team that's completely depleted and they were at home and it was probably a closer game than it really felt like.
It was a short week. Yeah, everything.
Short week. And we're sitting here just forgetting that they rattled off what was it? 5? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. 5 straight losses prior. They don't cover games. It's just a tough look for them. I'm in on Indy. You're in on Indy. We're going to follow them around. Should I trade Breece Hall, says Glitchy. What do you think about that, V? I think it's tough. Let me look up some of his metrics here. Let's just see kind of what he's looking at an advanced metrics point. Because it's weird. He's an ultra talented player, and there's no reason he shouldn't get a holy boatload of touches.
I think
But
he is
yeah,
getting a bunch of touches. It's just not going anywhere. The offense is not playing well. I do think they have a not terribly difficult schedule down the road. I think they still get to play Miami a couple of times. Not scared of that run defense. You still get a game against like you already played Patriots twice, so you have one more game against Buffalo. So I mean, I don't know if I'm totally scared with the matchups they have coming up. I think they play Seattle and the Rams. So
so yeah,
depends what
I
team
mean,
for them.
yeah, that's a good point too. Because when we look at it back from week 6, he's at 18 carries, and that was the big game against the Bills, where he absolutely slapped them for 113. 12 again. It's a Steelers D. That's obviously really stout. 16 against the Patriots, 15 against the Texans. He only had the 10 last week, but they were down by a lot. So, I would say maybe stick with it just because he's an ultra talented player. And if they're smart, they're going to give him the ball. And Todd Downing, that's why he got that position, was to give Breece Hall the football. That's something Neil's talked about a lot. So I completely agree. And then should I trade Swift since he has a very bad schedule?
I would be more inclined to trade Swift, although I don't think you would get as much for him as you would for Breece Hall. And I'm not actually too worried about the schedule. I mean, Green Bay is not like it's a spectacular rush defense. You play them twice. Detroit's not a spectacular run defense. You play them twice, although it's probably going to be a negative game script in those games, so you might not get as many touches. I mean, you play Seattle, the day after Christmas for the Bears. So I mean, it's not terrible. I don't think the schedule is too difficult.
The big issue is that Breece Hall is the answer in New York.
Right.
Give Breece Hall the ball early. Give Breece Hall the ball early, and you fix your problems in the first half. You stop giving other teams the opportunity to run up the score on you. You stop giving teams a chance to tee off on Aaron Rodgers, who we've continued to talk about, has lost a step in terms of his ability to navigate a pocket. That's just what it looks like. He's a little bit skittish. He's a little bit slower to react and move and evade some of these guys. if they're just going to give Breece Hall the ball, it'll solve a lot of these problems. But unfortunately, they either just don't do it or Rodgers checks them out of things. I'm not even entirely sure. But when we look at Swift, we got to see what the offense is going to do after the big changes in the staff. Yeah. So we have to see what we're going to get out of that. But at the end of the day, I think they're going to probably try to live and die by their young quarterback. And, maybe Swift has some games that you'd like. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But I would be more inclined to trade Swift. But like V said, I don't know that you're going to get quite as much. Should I trade him Amari Cooper? But I feel like he should be really good. I wouldn't. I think that they're going to kind of tap in with him down the stretch.
I just don't think you would get very much for him, even if you try to trade him. I wouldn't be willing to give up much for him.
Yeah. I mean, I think you probably want to bank on his upside and potentially, being a crucial piece to them late down the stretch because he is still new to the offense. Like, he's still got to learn things. So we'll see. I was going to trade DK, but I think he's going to be too good if he stays healthy. I think, Glitchy, were we talking about that? I think we were talking about that, Glitchy, when we were on one of the other shows. I can't remember, but I think we might have talked about that in terms of, I thought, and I still think like he's a good option because I think you'll get a bit for him, especially if he pops off. The issue's been Geno's like deep ball regression, and he kind of comes back and forth, but he's been playing like, the thing is he makes some bonehead plays that like give up the game quite a bit, but he's still kind of chucking it down the field. He's like that gunslinger mentality. He's more or less kind of fearless. So we do see him be able to fill up the stat sheet. So I can definitely side with that. I agree. V, anything that you see with DK?
I would be more inclined to keep him. And I just feel like he's still a top option on that offense. It's still a good high flying offense.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be in a rush to move him at this point.
It feels too like even JSN's like ascent, and he like gets more and more targets like as kind of the season goes on. And some of that's due to injury, but it doesn't feel like
injured, right?
Exactly. It doesn't necessarily feel like when they're both there, like those touches eat into DK's, or like even vice versa. I still feel like he gets his looks. They just kind of throw the ball more. I mean, at the end of the day, I haven't looked at it in a couple weeks, but a few weeks ago, Geno was leading the NFL in dropbacks by like a mile. They throw the hell out of the ball. So at the end of the day, talented receiver, a lot of opportunities. Why not keep it?
Yeah.
Anyway, Glitchy, thank you for coming by and with your questions. If you do have more, hit us up. I think we finished that game. That was the Indy game, right? Okay. All right. Next game on the schedule here that we are looking at is one V. You are in here. We have the Rams heading into New England to take on the Patriots. Rams -4.5 on the road.
Yep.
Although they had a pretty bad outing the last one. In New England, won their last 2 of 3. Kind of an interesting turnaround. I'm not really sure what to make of it most of the time. I wanted to go back and look. Does this line up with when Gerard said the team was soft? Was that 3 weeks ago? Time is just such a blur anymore. But anyway, yeah. They've been playing a bit better. Game total on this one, 43.5, depending on where you're shopping. What are you seeing in this one, V?
Yeah, I'm liking the under in this game at 43.5. I think despite getting quite a bit healthier for the Rams offense over the last few weeks with the return of Cooper Kupp, some offensive linemen getting back, we kind of we're hoping or anticipating that this offense is going to kind of start exploding and looking a lot better than they had early in the year. And that did happen in their first game all back together against Minnesota on that Thursday night a couple of weeks ago. Stafford had 4 touchdowns. They scored 30 points. And I think we were all expecting this to be a high-flying offense for the rest of the season. That has not been the case. The game after that Minnesota game was against the Seahawks. They did score 26, but that game went into overtime. They only had 20 points in regulation in that game against a not great Seattle defense. And then you come back this past week on Monday night, only scored 15 points against, again, a Dolphins defense that there's nothing special going on there. It's still a average to below average defense. You were not able to get into the end zone in that game. So, this Rams offense still some things to work out, I think, with everybody getting healthy. They're just not putting up that many points. I think they are moving the ball well, but they're just not getting into the end zone. You're not going up against a New England defense that is, maybe perhaps starting to turn things around after allowing 41 to Houston and Jacksonville to score 32 points. In England, they've only allowed 22 points to the Jets, 20 points to the Titans, 3 of them which came in overtime, so only 17 in regulation. And then they obviously had a monster game last week, only allowing 3 points to the Bears. They sacked Caleb Williams 9 times. I think you could get to Matthew Stafford in this one too. He was sacked 4 times against the Dolphins. So that offensive line is definitely beatable. So, not necessarily seeing a whole ton of points for the Rams in this one. They also have a couple injuries. Rob Havenstein has been ruled out. Joe Noteboom is doubtful in this game, so a couple things to monitor on that offensive line. And then the big news for that New England defense, Christian Barmore potentially returning this week. Might be a bit early. We'll see what they say, but he was practicing this week after having that, I think, was it a blood clot scare in the offseason? It didn't seem like he was going to play at all this season. So for him to be potentially back already, just barely past the midway point, that would be a huge boost for their defense. We'll see what happens there. On the other side, I think the Rams defense is looking surprisingly good since their bye week in week 6. They've allowed 23 or fewer points in every game. That includes 20 to Minnesota, 20 to Seattle, and just 23 to a healthy Miami team. Big reason for that, Jared Verse is playing ridiculously good football as a rookie, probably the leader in the clubhouse for a defensive rookie of the year. Then you pair him with Braden Fisk, also a rookie this year, and then their 2 young studs from last year, Kobe Turner and Byron Young. They have a really, really nice young defense that is playing very well. Going up against a New England offense where, you have Drake May. He has looked solid there despite the offensive line issues, but that hasn't really translated into them scoring a ton of points. The max points he scored in a start this year is 21 points. Since then, he has scored 19 or fewer points in the other 3 games that he has started and finished. So I think there's a lot of good efficiency numbers for Drake May. He's looked good on film. They're still just not scoring a ton of points. So this feels like a game that might not even break 40 points, if we're being honest. It could be like a 23-16 type game. So definitely like the under 43.5.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure where they get 43.5 from this game.
Yeah.
This screams 39 game point total for me. I would have set it at 39.5, frankly. But yeah, no, I completely agree. And when you look at what the Rams defense has done, especially up front, they are looking really strong. Christian Roseboom had a pick and a dropped interception that he laid out for on the side. And, when you get a guy who really hasn't played great in coverage and he starts performing really well, and you can actually match him up with a guy like Hunter Henry that they have over there, they're going to do pretty dang well. And when you match that with this front 7 or the front 4 on the defensive line, they're looking really good. So I completely agree. Jared Verse, I believe he had his highest graded pass rushing game of the year last week. So him hitting his stride, they're all looking good. I would definitely want to see that. And when we look at what the Patriots' issues have been pretty much all season, they've had a revolving door on the offensive line. They continue to struggle, especially at tackle, right tackle particularly. So that's something that we're going to want to see. And I completely agree. way too high on the game total here. So next game on the slate here, we have a Vegas heading into Miami to take on the Dolphins, and the Dolphins 7.5 point favorites in this one. Did not think that we would see that many times this season. Game total on this one, 44 points. V, you are in on this one. What are you seeing and what are you targeting?
Yeah, also targeting the game total in this one, but I'm going to take the over at 44. Let's start with the Raiders defense. They stink. They're not very good. They're allowing the 3rd most points per game in the league at 27.9 points per game. They've allowed 27 or more points in 4 of their last 5. They are tied for last in takeaways with just 5 on the season. They've played, 9 games, and they have 5 takeaways. It's pretty hard to do. Now you're going up against a Miami offense that just obviously, we're not surprised, but they look much better with Tua under center in the 3 games. Since he's been back, they've scored 27, 27, and 23 points, so looking pretty good. I don't think they're going to have any trouble scoring in the high 20s. Honestly, they should break 30 in this one. That's my expectation. They should be able to get into the low 30s in this one. That means, the Raiders don't have to do a whole lot. They just got to get to 16, 17 points. I think this is going to be an over. in this game. We'll see what we get from the Raiders offense. They also fired their offensive coordinator, fired Luke Getsy, bringing in Scott Turner as their new OC. Also bringing in Norv Turner to be an advisor. We'll see how that goes, bringing in somebody new midseason like that. Going up against a Miami defense that's been pretty up and down this year. They have 4 games where they've allowed 17 or fewer points, but they also have 4 games where they've allowed 28 or more points. So it feels like this Miami defense really boom or bust. Even if they have a good game, again, like I said, the Raiders can get to 16, 17 points. I think this should be a relatively easy over, looking at a score of like 31-17 in this one to shoot past the 44 number. So I like the over.
Yeah. Not so much in this game particularly, but I was reading a little bit about the coaching changes in Las Vegas. The Raiders have, I forget all the names, but the Raiders have like 5 ex-head coaches on the staff that were all elevated into those positions that were, obviously vacated when they fired, what was it? Quarterbacks coach Rick Scangarello. They fired the offensive line coach. Forget his name off the top of my head. And then they fired Luke Getsy. So when you have those pieces in the wings, I'm slightly confused how a guy like Luke Getsy got the offensive coordinator job off of the Chicago offense that wasn't good by any means, and now has a Raiders offense that also isn't good by any means. So it's just one of those weird, confusing situations where sometimes it feels like maybe a little bit too many cooks in the kitchen. So it's just an odd situation there. And yeah, they've been pretty porous and pretty bad in pretty much every facet of the game. Now, this is also one of those games, as we've been talking about in the Discord, one of those games that will not make any sense on the final score when it's all said and done. But I do think you are right on the right track where you're going to probably want to take the over here. And a lot of it is with this Dolphins offense looking a lot better. They've had some close games. I don't think you want to go with the spread here. I don't believe they've won a game as a favorite. They haven't really had that many games as a favorite, obviously, but you definitely don't want to take them there. And the new coaching bump is very real, and it's starting to look a little bit surreal in some aspects where teams just change coach and then all of a sudden it seems like all their problems get fixed, like what we saw with New Orleans last week, or we both took a big L on that one. So just the way that it goes though. And so I think we're going to stay away from the spread here. I think that that's a smart move, even though obviously I think there's a huge disparity between these two teams, but over on the game total definitely makes sense in that one. And Glitchy, I see you here. If Amari Cooper plays, do I play him over DK? That's actually something. We have both of those games on tap next. Actually, in a little bit, we have one more really good game to talk about here, but then we are going to jump into both of those games. We have the Seattle-San Francisco game on the schedule here. V's got a little action in that, and then I've got a little bit of action in the KC game. So we'll definitely allude to that. So stay with us, stay locked in. We'll definitely tap into that here in a minute. But V, the next game on the schedule is a good one. We kind of blew by these last two just because I think we really want to get to these like last 3 that are like much, much more interesting games on the schedule, because these are some barn burners. The first one, we have Baltimore heading into Pittsburgh. This is I'm so excited to see this matchup. This is going to be a crazy one. I want to see George Pickens get in a fight with somebody, frankly. I want to see him throw somebody UFC style. So Baltimore -3 heading into this one. Total on this game 48.5 points. Interesting, because usually these teams kind of duke it out and it ends up being
telling yourself like 10-15 years ago that a Steelers Ravens game would have a total of
48.5. Yeah, incredible. But V, we're both on the side of the spread here, and if anybody's watched this show, I think you guys know which way we're leaning. We're going with Mike Tomlin's boys at home, baby. You cannot gift Mike Tomlin points at home. frankly, and especially not with a team that's been playing as good as this Steelers team has been. I keep continuing having to eat crow every single week off of my take on them early in the year. I really wrote them off. They're 7-2, and it's okay because I've accepted that I made the mistake, and now we're all making money from it. So it's more than fine. So we're going to keep taking the Steelers here. V, what are you seeing in this matchup, and why are you liking Pittsburgh?
Yep, liking Pittsburgh +3, and we will start with Baltimore's defense because that is still a major area of concern. I know we all love to talk about that offense, and we'll get to it, but we really have to start with their defense. They've allowed 29 or more points in 4 of their last 6 games. They're still allowing the most passing yards per game. They are ahead of the next worst passing defense by a full 30 passing yards per game, which is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So they are just getting torched left, right, and center when it comes to that secondary and their pass defense. Part of the reason why they're giving up so many yards is that they have those pass attempts against them, which makes sense because they are usually leading in games. So teams are having to throw the ball to catch up. But even if you look at some other statistics like passing yards per attempt, they're allowing the 4th most passing yards per attempt. They're also allowing the 4th most yards per completion. So really, no matter what pass defense statistic you're looking at, Baltimore ranks near the bottom or at the bottom. So that's a major concern. Opposing quarterbacks have the 6th highest passer rating against this defense at 101.8. Now you have to go up against Russell Wilson, who I can't believe I'm saying this, has looked good this year in his 3 starts, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. Don't think that's going to change with this matchup because, again, Baltimore's defense is not trustworthy. And like you mentioned, you really just can't bet against Mike Tomlin as a home dog. I think Pittsburgh's defense will have their hands full going up against a Baltimore offense that is first in scoring at 31.8 points per game. Pittsburgh's defense, however, only allowing 16.2 points per game. That is the 2nd best in the NFL. Another big key stat, Pittsburgh allowing the 4th fewest rushing yards per game at 87.1. If Pittsburgh's defense can find a way to slow down Derrick Henry and Lamar on the ground, they definitely have a chance to not only cover in this game, but win this one outright. One key injury to note for Pittsburgh, Alex Highsmith has been ruled out for this one. He has been phenomenal on the defensive line. They still have Nick Herbig to back him up, who has looked really good in his limited snaps, and obviously you still have TJ Watt and Cam Hayward, who have been phenomenal this season, so not overly concerned with that injury. This is going to be an awesome, awesome game, and it's going to come right down to it. I think we've all seen the statistics this week. Lamar does not perform well against the Steelers for whatever reason. I don't think it's going to be as bad as it's been the last few years. He's not going to have one of those duck games that we've seen in the past years. But even if he plays well, this Pittsburgh team in general is just much better than we've seen in the last few years when you have guys like Kenny Pickett and some of those other quarterbacks being thrown out there who really have no chance. So this is going to be a really close competitive game, and I think Pittsburgh can win this one outright.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things that is going to be a huge decider in this game is that Pittsburgh loves to get up there. They love to press guys. Joey Porter Jr. is a guy that is built for press man coverage, and they do it a lot. And so when we see that, he's going to have to match up with some guys that do pretty good getting off the press, particularly Rashad Bateman, who's had some good games. He's really inconsistent, though, so sometimes it's iffy. He gets a lot of separation, though. That's something that we're going to need to watch. That could be a huge key in this game. But I think we are on the right side here when you take Mike Tomlin and what Russell Wilson has been able to do in this offense. We talked about it earlier in the season. This is going to be a scheme that fits him better, and they've shown it. They've shown it significantly since they put him into the starting lineup. It's a team that likes to run the football, likes to run play action, and then give him opportunities to take some shots deep. And you know what? George Pickens is a dog, man. I just like seeing George Pickens play. Sometimes I can see why people sometimes don't like him, think a certain type of way about him. The dude's just angry. He just wants to win games. He lost for a long time, and now he's getting the football a little bit. So
I think he just likes contact, man. He just wants to wants
to hit
fight
people,
someone,
bro. You know what? If he retires, when he retires, he's got a job for himself in the WWE because he threw one of the I don't even remember who it was that he threw to the ground, but that was incredible.
Yeah.
Hey, this game is going to be a game of fireworks. I don't know what else we can tell you. One of the best defenses in the league, one of the best offenses in the league. There's not a whole lot more that you can want to say about this. You're going to tune in, and of course, it's another one of those days that has like a prime matchup in the 11 a.m. slot, a prime matchup in the 2 or 11 a.m. I'm in a weird time zone, you guys. In the early slot, in the 1 p.m. slot, and then you have, a good high profile matchup in the late slot. So it's like a week of all primetime games. And we're gonna get
Pretty
into
much.
some of those. We're gonna get into some of those next. So the next game on the slate here is one that Glitchy's going to want to pay attention to here. We're probably going to allude a little bit to what we think we're going to get out of DK in this one. But the Seahawks head into San Francisco to take on the 49ers. 49ers, 6.5-point favorites at home here. Game total, anywhere between 47.5, 48.5, depending on where you're shopping. Looks like it's generally settled around about 48.5 at the more reputable sports book. Sorry, ESPN. But so you've got some skin in on this one. You're liking the game total. What were you seeing that has you leaning on this game total, and which direction are you going?
Yeah, I'm liking the over in this game at 48 points. Seems like a lot, but I just think both offenses are going to be successful in this one, are going to be able to put up points. Starting with Seattle, they're coming off a bye, and they will have DK back. In their last matchup against the 49ers earlier this year, they scored 24 points and had over 350 yards of offense. Tre'Davious Ward will be out in this one, which is a pretty big loss for that Niners secondary. I think, Gino's going to, it's not going to be a pretty game. I don't know if it's going to be super efficient for the Seahawks offense, but I think they're going to do what they have to do. They're going to move the ball. They're going to get up. They're going to get their points, whether it's in garbage time or not. Doesn't really matter. I think they're going to be able to do enough to put up enough points to hit this over. For San Francisco, I think their offense, they only scored 23 points last week, but I think they look much better with CMC out there. We all know Jake Moody missed those 3 field goals, which really hampered them and made it look like their offense wasn't as productive as they were. But if he makes those field goals, they break 30 points in that one, looking like the offense we expect them to be. CMC, not 100% clearly, but obviously makes a big difference for that offense. Going up against a Seattle defense that has really struggled recently. They have allowed 26 or more points in 5 of their last 6 games. They have allowed over 365 yards of offense in 6 straight games. This defense for Seattle just not playing well at all right now. So definitely think it's not going to be difficult for San Fran to score points. They should be able to break 30 in this one. And then I think Seattle can score in the mid-20s. This game should go over 50 in my opinion.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And when we talk about, like you said, Tre'Davious Ward is going to be out for this one. That's what I wanted to definitely talk about, because that does present a pretty positive matchup for DK. So to answer your question, Glitchy, I would probably lean DK. I don't really want to pick on Kansas City. It's something we'll get into here in a second, but I think that you have a plus matchup there because while, a guy like Diamador Lenore is a pretty solid cornerback, Charv Ward is head and shoulders their best corner, and not having him and having him be hampered quite a bit this year has really set him back. He hasn't looked quite like the dude that we saw last year that pretty much locked up everybody. So that's definitely the way that I'm leaning. And gosh, I wonder what the trends are. That's not something I looked in directly, but now I'm really interested, and I'm probably going to look at it as soon as we get off the show of what his trends are versus this defense. Because I looked at it a little bit when they played the last time. Usually Tre'Davious Ward's gotten a little bit better of DK, but like we said, it hasn't quite been the same Charv that we've seen in previous seasons. So that's the way that I'm leaning, and I completely agree with you. I think that an over on 48.5 here is not terrible. I did take an L last week on taking San Francisco minus 6.5. And like you said, the game shouldn't have been as close as it probably was. Yeah. I think Deebo Samuel probably agrees that the game shouldn't have been as close as it probably was. So, I think that the positive that you're going to get from Christian McCaffrey is that they're going to be a lot more efficient in the red zone. It's something that we talked about last week, but they've been not that great in the red zone, which is a little bit surprising because, they have all these weapons and you've got Kittle and you've got Debo, and I know they don't have Ayuk anymore, but you had these talented weapons, but they really hadn't been all that efficient in the red zone. Getting back the guy that has a literal boatload of red zone touches, like over the last since he came to San Francisco, he leads the league in red zone touches, and he didn't even play this year. So until last week. So anyway, I completely agree with you. Over 48 on Seattle at San Francisco. And the last game on the schedule, it's another crazy one. This is going to be a good one, a barn burner. Everybody's going to be watching. Everybody's going to be tuned in. We've got Kansas City heading to Buffalo to take on the Bills, and they did it. They gave Patrick Mahomes points, man. They gave Pat Mahomes points. So Kansas City plus 2.5 on the road here. Game total 46.5 points. And I'm going to keep this one pretty simple. If you guys want to hear me break down the game a little bit more, you can head over and check out the PFF Daily podcast. I did a hit on them that I think posted this morning. So you can go check that out over on Spotify. Bottom line, don't give Pat Mahomes points. It's that simple. KC just keeps winning games. And this one's sore for me, V. This one's sore for me.
Yeah.
The Broncos nearly took this team down last week, but KC just finds ways to win. They've won 4 games off of the final play. They had that game with Cincy early. They had another one, I think it was like week 3. I forget exactly which game.
Atlanta, probably. Yeah.
I think it was the Atlanta game. And then they had the game against Tampa that went to overtime. And then you've got this one last week. So they just continue to find ways to win games. And it doesn't necessarily look all that close. But they are pretty modest, 4-4-1 against the spread. They're 0-3 over their last 3 against the spread. But when we talk about what Mahomes does with points, is incredible. You don't even need me to say it because I know it's been all over every outlet that you can imagine. Mahomes is fantastic when you give him points. 12-1-1 against the spread as the underdog. 11-3 straight up. So not only is he covering these spreads, he's winning these games outright. They haven't really looked exceedingly strong in a lot of metrics, and that's something we talk about every week. They're not like the strongest defense in the league. They are not the strongest offense in the league. They're kind of a little bit middling in both. Now, they're a very respectable defense, and they're a strong defense. Steve Spagnuolo, I mean, anybody who watches the show knows I love to talk about Steve Spagnuolo's defense. But in terms of a lot of advanced metrics, they're not this cataclysmic unit like they were last year that really led the way for them. They're still a really strong unit though. But something that this offense has done fairly well is that they're really, really good on late downs. On 3rd and 4th down, they're fantastic. And a lot of that is because of what Mahomes can do. And it's not even just gimme downs where it's like 3rd and short. They're converting downs of like 3rd and 7 or more at a very high rate.
How upset were you with that 3rd and 13 to P. Ryan last week?
I was literally livid. I was so freaking mad. Brother, our group chat of all of my friends here in Denver literally erupted. So, yeah.
You just can't do anything about that.
just not going to do anything about that. So, in late down conversion rate, though, this team is converting 54.5%. That's fantastic. That's the best in the league. They're the only team over 50%. So when you can convert any 3rd down at over 50%, you're going to give yourself a good chance to win. And that makes up for a lot of their deficiencies on 1st down and a lot of their deficiencies scoring and just remaining efficient throughout the game. But that also leads into where else they are. When you're doing that on 3rd down, what does that tell you? This is a team that's clutch. Well, what happens when you have a team that's clutch? Well, they go out and kill you in the 4th quarter and overtime, which this team continues to do. They're tied for 1st in scoring drive percentage in the 4th quarter and overtime. So games stay close towards the end, and then the Chiefs just figure out how to separate themselves. So I'm leaning that way. Give me Mahomes. I'm going to take the trends, the historic trends. I know it's something that we talk about a lot. Also, usually early on in the season when we're looking at like previous year trends where we say, hey, you can't necessarily equate a team what they did last year to what they're going to do this year. Teams change. There's a lot of turnover. But something that doesn't change is what Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid can do every single week. So I'm leaning on that side there. And Glitchy says, I'm a Lions fan, so it's sad and it hurts just thinking about my boy Hutchinson. That is a tough loss. That's been a tough one for them for sure.
Yeah, he had a previous question asking about Zadarius Smith, how he's going to do this week against Jacksonville. Should probably have a pretty decent game. I guess a terrible Jacksonville offense is starting Mac Jones again this week. So yeah, don't worry about it, Glitchy. It's going to be a nice, easy win. Probably going to take the Lions to cover their big spread this week too, because
I think this is the
hard
biggest
to imagine them not covering.
It's the biggest one we've seen all week, and I think we both probably pondered taking it. Like 13 and a half points. I mean, they're going to win by 20. So
at least, yeah.
Is this the game that gets Doug Peterson out? Is I think the question.
It would make sense.
Maybe.
Definitely make sense.
Maybe if they get absolutely slaughtered. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. V, anything else you're seeing in this one that I'm not seeing?
Just a couple big injuries to note for Buffalo. Keon Coleman again ruled out, and then earlier today, Dalton Kincaid ruled out for Buffalo. So definitely a couple big losses. I think we talked about their injuries on offense last week, and we said like they're playing Indy. It doesn't really matter that they're going to be down a couple of guys. Not the case when you're playing against this Chiefs team, and especially this Chiefs defense. If you're not at 100%, even if you're at 100%, you're going to have a tough time against them. Now that you're down a couple of key players, definitely going to be a little tricky for this Buffalo offense to navigate. Either way, though, this is going to be a really, really fun game. I was definitely considering taking Kansas City, but I was like, let me just enjoy this game, not have any stress on either side of the bet. I'm just going to enjoy beautiful football. So I'm going to stay away on this one, but it should be a really, really fun one.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And there's a lot of good stuff to break down in this one. We could have probably gone on for an hour about just this game alone, but we will let you guys off for the night, as that is our last game of the slate. No problem at all. Glitchy, you have a great rest of your night, and everybody else that came through, thank you guys so much. If you ever want to hit us up in the Discord, ask us your betting questions, anything, hit us up in there. That is where we hang out and, just kick it and talk about things. So that wraps us up for week 11. The weeks fly by, V. Back same time next week, 8 p.m. Eastern. You guys know where to stay. Stay locked in. Also, check out all of our other awesome shows. Jason's got a bunch of shows on. He's on all week long. Come and ask him your questions. I believe the next time he's up is Sunday before the games. So go hit him up. Ask him your start-sit questions. See what he thinks about your lineup. You can also hit us up in the Discord, like I said. And we'll be back next week. V, any parting words for the folks at home?
Definitely jump in the Discord. We have we have one good primetime game and one not so great primetime game because, again, we're subjected to watch this terrible Cowboys team on Monday night. Either way, I'm going to have a couple picks for both of those games, so definitely hop in and check those out. But yeah, hopefully everybody enjoyed the show, and we'll catch up next week.
And until next time, everybody, good night and good luck.